I think Yats is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. He's the guy, what he needs is Klitsch and Tony Book on the outside. I just think Klitsch going in, he's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Okay. Good. Well, do you want us to try to set up a call with him as the next step?
Sullivan's come back to me, VFR, saying you need Biden, and I said probably tomorrow for an attaboy and to get the deets to stick. So okay. Biden's willing.
So you had this remarkable phone call where you have these two senior officials of the U.S. government apparently talking about a coup or how they were planning to restructure the government of Ukraine.
So just a heads up, that was not the clip where he was with Yanukovych. Sorry, that was my bad. But he does extensive interviews with Yanukovych in this documentary.
Right, and just to be transparent, Yanukovych is a Russian-leaning guy.
But that's what's interesting is he seemed like he was trying to make overtures to the EU. And people remember the lobbying scheme that Paul Manafort got caught up in when he was at Mercury Public Affairs, a huge, powerful lobbying firm, and the Podesta Group, Tony Podesta, ended up having to retroactively file as a registered lobbyist on behalf of Ukraine because he was representing, and again, you sound like a crank when you talk about this, but it's true, the Party of Regions, Yanukovych's party. They set up a shell think tank called the European Center for a Modern Ukraine in order to avoid registering on behalf of FARA. Now, eventually, through really great reporting by Ken Vogel and others, it came to be completely apparent that this was a shell think tank representing a political party in Ukraine, and they were trying basically to help Yanukovych get closer to the West. They were talking extensively to Hillary Clinton's State Department. You can see that in their retroactive filings. So this was all super tangled with Western interests. It's the same thing when you go down the Burisma rabbit hole and you realize how connected to sort of political power Burisma was, and then Hunter Biden was, and then Joe Biden was, just sort of by association. Western interests in Ukraine have been pushing in, making money off of Ukrainian politics in really disgusting ways. And I think one of the things, and Ryan, I'm curious, because you probably remember this, covering this when it happened with Maidan and when the Nuland phone call came out, is people were shocked, although they shouldn't have been, by her tone of voice, where she's just looking at Ukraine and Donbass like a chessboard.
Right, and because our media sucks, like the thing that made a ton of news out of that call, which presumably was intercepted by Russia, by the way, and then leaked, was when she said "F the EU." It's like, do we want to go to who do we want to go to? EOC, EU, and she's like "F the EU," and because she said it like that and said that, that became the big piece of news out of it. And the German chancellor said, how dare she say that? Like, the EU. Actually, legitimately, how dare she say that? Like, the EU ought to have much more say over what's going on with regard to Ukraine than the United States would. Never, setting aside the idea that either of them should be dictating kind of who runs Ukraine, but I think that the Biden, the Hunter Biden, the Burisma, the lobbying, the Manafort stuff, I think that's all interesting, but I also think it's peripheral because when you have these kind of global power struggles, you've got on the one hand the kind of foundational chess playing between major powers that are driven by geopolitics between kind of the EU, the United States, and Russia. You've got those main forces. Then you've got parasites that just kind of feed off of the host that is this thing. You've got people like Manafort, none of them care.
Yes.
Hunter Biden, they don't care. They're just like, oh, there's a clash of interests here. Anytime there's a clash of interests, there's going to be money that's moving around, and we're going to try to make some of that money. And so you can think whatever you want to think about the peripheral stuff, and you can go ahead and lock all the people up as far as I'm concerned. But the actual power play, the actual geopolitics underway are what they appear to be. Like Victoria Nuland did, come up with the structure of the new Ukrainian government. Like she kicked around the names. This is who we should put in. This is who should be on the outside. And that is, in fact, what ended up happening. Like that's what happened. The guy that you're talking about, Ole Tyanibuk, is basically a neo-Nazi. Like McCain met with him.
Yes.
Nuland is propping him up there.
Yes. And then they're calling
like I said,
everyone a Nazi here, by the way.
Like I said, we sound crazy, but like, no. Like just Google this. Just Google this guy.
Yeah.
Like it's a hard right neo-Nazi party that we kind of pushed into power, and then Russia responded immediately by that little quiet little green men thing where they sent in all these folks into Crimea, and they just popped up, and they're like, Crimea is ours now.
Yes.
And the new far right government was hyper nationalist, and the eastern Ukraine was more Yanukovych country and more Russian speaking. This new far right government came in and effectively banned speaking Russian in public, and a war breaks out in the Donbass in the eastern Ukraine region.
Yeah.
And 10 years later, here we are. So we go back to that guy's original point. Even if you take her at her own goals,
peace.
Like her goal, you can agree or disagree with it. You can think it's cynical. You can think it's evil. You can think it's imperialism. It also didn't work.
Nope.
Like she lost. She's losing.
That's why I loved the Fauci comparison, because it's like him saying our goal is to enhance the pathogens, to protect us from the pathogens.
Right, stop pandemics.
Yeah, exactly. So his goal was public health. Her goal was peace. And by those very standards, absolutely
He certainly
nothing.
didn't stop the pandemic. That's the funny thing. Even if you believe that it did not come out of the lab in Wuhan, the lab in Wuhan's goal was to detect a pandemic before it goes global.
Well done.
And either way, it started either in the lab or within a couple miles of the lab, and they didn't stop it. So
just great work all around, everyone.
Good work all around.
Yanukovych did end up fleeing to take shelter in Russia after a scuttled EU deal, basically.
And a lot of people thought that when Putin came back to Kyiv, he was going to try to put Yanukovych or somebody like him back on top of a puppet government.
And then again, it's this argument about Victoria Nuland, by her own standards, and so often with U.S. policy, still treating everything like it's the Cold War. But even during the Cold War, you end up pushing people who may have been amenable to making deals with the EU further into the hands of Putin, which was not your goal, but counterintuitively to you, but intuitively to everyone else, is like very obviously going to be the outcome sometimes. I do have one question before we wrap to you, Ryan.
We also got to talk about her husband before we wrap, but go ahead.
Yes. My question was going to be, actually, this is perfect. My question was going to be, the CIA report in the New York Times comes out last week about the sort of deep, long-standing CIA operations in Ukraine, which we knew about from other reporting, but I think this was very clearly a coordinated leak by people in the intelligence community to get the New York Times to report that the American intelligence community had been trying to steer the Ukrainian intelligence in the right direction over all of these years, but Ukrainian intelligence just kept going rogue and doing their own thing. It sort of felt like a cover your ass leak. And then the next week, Victoria Nuland is gone. I'm not tying those together in any conspiratorial way. I'm just genuinely curious what you think, Ryan, if Victoria Nuland is leaving because she lost clout, because her argument started to look more obviously like it had failed. But then at the same time, that brings us back to Jake Sullivan and Tony Blinken and Joe Biden himself. I
mean, I would assume that she stepped aside in protest of her own, policy objectives, no longer carrying the day. Mm-hmm. Like I would guess that whatever she was arguing for is no longer the thing that's going to happen. This is not the type of person whose will to power just has them stepping away at any key moments.
Right. That's true.
So that's my suspicion, and that's why universally people who watch this are saying this is likely to signal a significant strategic shift regarding American policy in Ukraine.
Now, let's talk about the husband.
Her husband, Robert Kaplan.
That's a Real Housewives quote, by the way. You should know.
Oh, yeah.
Should we talk about the husband? It's the 9-year anniversary of the Amsterdam dinner from the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, by the way. We didn't even celebrate it.
We should talk about the husband.
Let's talk about the husband.
Real Housewives of Foggy Bottom. So Robert Kaplan is one of the leading kind of neocons. And she, too, has been in the neocon circle. So if this was like one of these marriages where the people are, have divergent politics, then who cares who she's married to? But like her politics and Robert Kaplan's politics pretty clearly overlap. Now, we don't have as much public writing, from Nuland because she's been an internal operator, basically her entire career. But we do have it from Robert Kaplan, who was, co-founder basically of the neoconservative movement in the 1990s that orchestrated the invasion of Iraq and the rest of that disastrous kind of American, aggressively imperial policy, rather than the kind of Nuland attempts to do imperialism, which is color revolutions and manipulating behind the scenes, but both towards the same end, spreading democracy. Working great.
Yeah, it's just synergy, just across the board. I actually like the Real Housewives of Foggy Bottom reference because it's basically how this is operating. I don't mean that in like a sexist way, because obviously Victoria Nuland is not a housewife, and that's sort of the joke with the housewives themselves.
No, she's the brains of that family.
I mean, but it's just how DC works. That's the swamp for you in a nutshell.